In this video, I'm about to reveal 30 tofu brands that are heavily chemically altered and exactly why they're worth avoiding, plus 10 clean, minimally processed, and genuinely safe tofu options that you can trust. Starting with number 30, House Foods. House Foods is one of the biggest tofu manufacturers in the US, but its regular non-organic line has earned criticism for being more industrial than natural. This version of their tofu often relies on calcium sulfate and magnesium chloride blends, but in higher concentrations than traditional artisanal tofu. Those coagulant combinations help create a firm, uniform texture, but they also make the tofu feel noticeably rubbery and less flavorful, a sign of heavy texturizing. Another issue is the use of conventionally grown soybeans, which are typically treated with pesticides and industrial defoaming agents during processing. While allowed under food safety guidelines, it results in a tofu that tastes slightly metallic or chalky to sensitive palates. Some consumers also report a chemical-like brine smell when opening the pack, which comes from the preservation fluid used to extend shelf life. House Foods makes a consistent product, but the overuse of coagulants, industrial soybean sourcing, and chemically preserved brine make their non-organic line far from clean or traditionally crafted. Number 29. Nasoya. Nasoya dominates supermarket tofu shelves, but its regular, non-organic line is often criticized for its highly processed profile. Many consumers notice an overly firm, almost bouncy texture, which usually indicates the use of stronger coagulant systems, frequently a combination of calcium sulfate and added stabilizers to maintain shape during shipping and long refrigeration periods. One primary concern tied to Nasoya's regular tofu is the use of hexane-treated conventional soybeans. Hexane extraction is standard in industrial soy production, allowing higher oil removal efficiency, but it also classifies the final soybean ingredient as chemically processed rather than whole food-based. The brand was also involved in a 2017 quality control warning after consumers reported swollen packages and off odors in specific lots, which raised concerns about packaging sterilization practices. Flavor-wise, many buyers describe the tofu as slightly acidic or metallic, a result of preservatives in the soaking liquid designed to keep the tofu shelf-stable for extended periods. Nasoya's regular line is accessible, but its industrial soybean sourcing, stabilization chemistry, and past packaging complaints make it far from a clean tofu option. Number 28. Morinu Shelf-Stable Tofu. Morinu's shelf-stable tofu is convenient, but that convenience comes at the cost of heavy processing. Unlike refrigerated tofu, Morinu uses aseptic, ultra-high temperature sterilization, which exposes the tofu to intense heat before sealing it in lined cartons. While safe, UHT treatment significantly alters the tofu's natural structure, creating a pudding-smooth texture that feels more engineered than fresh. Because it must survive months without refrigeration, Morinu relies on preservation chemistry, including modified magnesium chloride blends and stabilizing agents that help maintain firmness during long-term storage. Many consumers report a plastic-like aroma upon opening the pack, which often comes from the aseptic packaging reacting with the tofu's moisture content over time. The brand faced widespread user complaints in multiple years related to swelling cartons, which usually indicates gas buildup inside a sign of compromised sterilization or microbial activity. Not an official recall, but enough to concern regular buyers. While shelf-stable tofu is convenient for storage, Morinu's heavy heat treatment, intense processing, stabilizers, and packaging-related off-notes make it one of the most chemically altered tofu options available. Number 27. Soy Boy. Soy Boy is respected for its organic products, but its regular commercial line is a very different story. This version is designed for food service and bulk supply, so it uses high-intensity coagulant systems, typically calcium sulfate fortified with additional stabilizing minerals to create an extra firm, transport-resistant texture. That's great for restaurants, but leaves the tofu noticeably rubbery and dense, a common sign of heavy texturizing chemistry. Another concern is the industrial brine used to preserve bulk blocks. Commercial-grade brine often contains acidity regulators and mineral blends that keep the tofu from breaking apart during shipping. Consumers frequently report a chalky, mineral-heavy aftertaste, which is typical when brine chemistry overshadows the actual flavor of the soybean. Soy Boy's regular line also relies on conventional soybeans, which are usually processed with defoamers and high-temperature blanching agents, a far cry from the brand's cleaner organic products. While Soy Boy is known for quality in its premium lines, the commercial-grade regular tofu is noticeably altered, with heavier coagulants, industrial brine, and a processed flavor that doesn't resemble fresh tofu. Number 26. Pulmyeon. Pulmyeon is massive in East Asian markets and US supermarkets, but its regular tofu line tends to be far more industrial than its premium versions. This line often contains multiple coagulants at once, including calcium sulfate blended with magnesium chloride, creating a texture that is overly firm, springy, and unnaturally uniform, classic signs of processing meant for mass-scale distribution. Pulmyeon's conventional soybeans are typically sourced from large suppliers who use chemical dissolventization and hexane-based oil extraction, especially for non-organic batches. This upstream processing creates a soybean base that is more chemically manipulated before it ever becomes tofu. Another issue is the preservation liquid, which may include acidity regulators to maintain color and control pH. Consumers often describe Pulmyeon's regular tofu as having a slightly sour or synthetic aroma, especially after opening, which is common when coagulants and preservation agents interact during storage. Pulmyeon produces excellent organic tofu, but the regular line feels heavily engineered, relying on multi-coagulant chemistry, industrial soybean sourcing, and pH-controlled brines rather than clean, traditional tofu making. Number 25. Trader Joe's regular tofu. Trader Joe's has loyal fans, but their regular tofu, non-organic, has long been criticized for feeling far more processed than it appears. The biggest issue is its hyper-uniform firmness, which indicates reliance on stronger commercial coagulants, usually calcium sulfate, paired with firming agents that keep the tofu stable through long-distance shipping. Because the tofu is made from conventionally grown soybeans, it often carries the characteristics of industrial soybean processing, including exposure to anti-foaming agents, bleaching of soy solids, and chemical desolventization during oil removal. Many consumers report a metallic or chalky note, which commonly results from mineral-heavy coagulants reacting with preserved soybean proteins. Trader Joe's tofu also sits in high mineral preservation liquid that helps extend shelf life, but can cause a slightly chemical brine smell when the pack is opened. While safe, it's far from clean label. Trader Joe's excels at many products, but their regular tofu is one of the most chemically engineered items in the store, defined by potent firming agents, conventional soybean chemistry, and preservation brine flavors that overshadow natural tofu taste. Number 24. Great Value Tofu. Great Value tofu looks simple on the shelf, but its processing is anything but. This store-brand tofu is produced in bulk through high-intensity calcium sulfate coagulation, which gives it a substantial, borderline rubbery structure. That stiffness is a strong sign of aggressive coagulation and heavy mechanical pressing used to stabilize mass-produced tofu. Because Walmart demands long transport durability, the tofu is packed in high mineral preservation liquid, which often creates a subtle chemical brine aroma when the seal is broken. The soybeans used are conventionally sourced and typically undergo chemical dissolventization, a process that removes soybean oil through hexane-based extraction before the beans are processed into tofu base. Add in industrial defoaming agents used during boiling, and you get tofu that tastes slightly bitter or chalky to sensitive palates. Consumers frequently report texture inconsistencies, where the block feels firm in the center but mushier on the edges, a typical result when stabilizers interact unevenly in refrigerated transit. While budget-friendly, Great Value tofu is one of the most chemically manipulated, heavily pressed, and preservation-dependent options in major grocery stores. Number 23. Market Pantry Tofu. Target's Market Pantry Tofu tries to appear clean and minimal, but the behind-the-scenes processing tells a different story. This regular tofu line relies on dual coagulant systems, typically calcium sulfate blended with magnesium chloride, to create a denser structure that survives shipping from centralized suppliers. That's why many buyers describe the texture as tight, rubbery, or compressed, a direct indicator of industrial firmness engineering. Because the product is aimed at affordability, the soybeans used come from large-scale suppliers that commonly employ chemical refining, bleaching of soy solids, and hexane extraction during soybean meal preparation. These steps don't show up on labels, but significantly alter the base before coagulation even begins. The preserved water also uses pH-adjusting agents to prevent browning during extended refrigerated storage, often causing the subtle sour note people report right after opening. Market Pantry tofu isn't unsafe, but it's definitely chemically structured, relying on industrial soy processing, multi-coagulant firmness, and pH-controlled brine, rather than a traditional tofu making method. Number 22. Hodo flavored processed tofu line. Hodo's plain tofu is generally clean, but their flavored processed tofu line is another category entirely. These pre-seasoned blocks undergo heavy marinating, repasteurizing, and stabilizer treatment to keep flavors consistent and shelf-stable. Unlike standard tofu, flavored processed tofu must withstand spice oils, acids, and sugar, so manufacturers reinforce it with texture modifiers that make it unnaturally firm and springy. These flavored blocks often contain preservative acids, emulsifiers, and engineered spice concentrates that help lock in flavor during prolonged refrigeration. While allowed in packaged foods, they turn the tofu into something closer to a processed meat substitute than a fresh soy product. Many consumers note a waxy or slippery outer layer, which occurs when stabilizers and oil-based marinades bind to the tofu surface. Because the tofu undergoes multiple heating cycles after seasoning, the proteins become over-denatured, giving the tofu a dense, chew-resistant texture instead of the natural softness expected from traditional tofu. Convenience aside, this line is one of the most chemically altered, texture-modified, and heat-processed tofu products in mainstream stores. Number 21. Simple Truth. Kroger's Simple Truth is marketed as a health-oriented brand, but the regular non-organic tofu is still mass-produced using conventional soybean prep methods. The soybeans typically undergo chemical extraction and refining, which removes oils through industrial solvents before the beans are reconstituted into tofu base. This step alone makes the final product feel less natural than traditional whole bean tofu. The coagulation process also uses high calcium sulfate loading, which gives the tofu a chalky firmness and a slightly gritty afterbite that many buyers notice. Because this tofu is meant for wide distribution across Kroger-owned chains, it's packed in mineral-buffered brine to maintain its pale color and prevent textural collapse. That buffering brine can interact with the soy proteins, creating a mild bitterness or metallic edge. Consumers often report the tofu smelling off or chemical-like after opening, which usually comes from pH regulators interacting with the packaging. While the Simple Truth organic line is better, the non-organic variant is clearly industrial, heavily coagulated, and chemically stabilized. Number 20. Safeway Tofu. Safeway's store-brand tofu follows a production model centered on long-distance distribution, which means it relies on more aggressive processing techniques than smaller brands. The tofu is built with multi-stage pressing and high-density coagulants, resulting in a firm, compact block that doesn't crumble easily, a typical sign of heavy texturizing chemicals and mechanical force. The soybeans used tend to be conventionally sourced from large commodity suppliers, where chemical washing, defoaming agents, and bleaching of soy solids are routine. These steps strip the tofu of much of its natural flavor, leaving a muted, slightly starchy or mineral-heavy taste that consumers often mention in reviews. Safeway tofu is stored in stabilized soaking liquid, containing mineral buffers intended to extend shelf life during interstate transportation. This brine can cause a slight synthetic smell immediately after opening, especially when the tofu has been on shelves for multiple weeks. Safe but far from natural, Safeway tofu ends up being one of the most overprocessed, chemically stabilized, and flavor-dulled tofu varieties among big grocery chains. Number 19. Kroger Tofu. Kroger's regular tofu may look similar to Simple Truth, but its processing is noticeably more industrial. The brand relies on high-pressure mechanical pressing that gives the tofu a dense, almost rubber-like structure, evidence of stronger coagulation chemistry and pressure cycles far beyond what traditional tofu undergoes. The soybeans used in Kroger tofu are typically commodity grade, meaning they're processed with refining chemicals and solvent extraction before becoming tofu slurry. That upstream processing creates a base that tastes flatter, which is why many consumers describe the tofu as bland, industrial, or overly firm. Kroger tofu also sits in a brine fortified with calcium salts that increases firmness over time, but can lead to a chalky or metallic flavor. In some user complaints, people note the tofu smelling sour or cloudy, which usually points to pH-regulated brines aging inside refrigeration. Overall, Kroger tofu is built for durability, not purity. Its reliance on commodity soy, pressure engineering, calcium-heavy brine, and industrial coagulation makes it one of the more chemically altered supermarket tofus. Number 18. Signature Select Tofu. Signature Select, another Safeway, Albertsons umbrella brand, produces tofu aimed at affordability rather than clean label quality. This regular tofu uses reinforced coagulation blends, usually calcium sulfate boosted with secondary mineral salts, giving it a stiff, cookie-cutter texture that feels engineered rather than fresh. Because Signature Select sources soy from large conventional suppliers, the beans often undergo solvent extraction, bleaching, and high-heat refining before becoming tofu mash. Those steps remove natural soybean aromas, creating the slightly papery, neutral flavor many buyers complain about. The block is stored in acid-regulated packing liquid, helping it survive extended shelf times, but often causing a faint sharpness or chemical tang when first opened. Texture complaints ranging from crumbly edges to excessively tough centers are common, usually the result of uneven mineral interactions inside the tofu. Signature Select tofu isn't unsafe, but it's definitely one of the most chemically adjusted, texture-engineered, and flavor-stripped budget tofu options in big supermarkets. Number 17. Publix Tofu. Publix tofu is widely available across the southeastern U.S., but the regular line is known for its noticeably processed texture. The tofu relies on heavy calcium sulfate coagulation, creating a firm block that resists breaking, which is helpful for shipping, but a clear sign of industrial-style texturizing. Many consumers describe it as stiff, compressed, or overly dense, characteristics that come from aggressive coagulation and mechanical pressing. The soybeans used are conventionally grown and subjected to chemical refining, deodorizers, and desolventizing treatments, all of which reduce natural flavor and aroma. Because Publix distributes tofu across large regions, it sits in highly stabilized brine, containing mineral buffers that keep the tofu from yellowing or breaking down during extended storage. Some buyers report a faint, bitter, or metallic aftertaste, which often occurs when calcium-heavy brines react with soy proteins over time. While Publix excels in many fresh foods, its tofu is clearly mass-processed, chemically stabilized, and flavor-muted, making it far from a clean tofu option. Number 16. Aldi Earth-Grown Regular Tofu. Aldi's Earth-Grown line looks clean and minimal, but the regular tofu version is far more processed than shoppers realize. To survive Aldi's long import and nationwide distribution system, this tofu uses high-load calcium sulfate coagulation, producing an unnaturally tight, dense texture that feels engineered rather than soft or delicate. That stiffness is a sign of heavy mineral use during coagulation. Aldi's supply chain relies on commodity-grade conventional soybeans, which typically undergo chemical desolventization and refining before being turned into tofu mash. This upstream processing flattens the soybeans' natural flavor, leading to the dry, chalky taste many buyers mention. The tofu also sits in pH-adjusted brine, designed to maintain color and firmness during long warehouse storage. That brine can interact with the tofu, producing a faint, acidic, or mineral-heavy aroma when opened. While the earth-grown label suggests simplicity, the regular tofu is actually heavily coagulated, industrially refined, and brine-stabilized, making it one of Aldi's most chemically altered plant-based items. Number 15. Meijer Tofu. Meijer's store-brand tofu is affordable, but its processing is geared more toward durability than clean, traditional production. The tofu is made with a reinforced calcium sulfate dominant coagulant blend, giving it a tough, compressed texture that many reviewers describe as overly firm or dense in the wrong way. That firmness indicates industrial-style coagulation meant to survive long-distance transport. The soybeans used by Meijer suppliers are typically chemically refined, undergoing solvent extraction and high-heat deodorizing before becoming tofu slurry. These steps strip natural soybean aromatics, which is why Meijer tofu often tastes flat, slightly bitter, or vaguely metallic. To maintain shelf stability, the product is stored in buffered mineral water, which helps prevent yellowing but can leave a chemical tang when the tofu is first opened. Some consumers have reported uneven firmness, where the edges crumble but the center feels rubbery, a classic sign of inconsistent mineral penetration during coagulation. Meijer tofu is safe, but clearly industrial, chemically processed, and heavily stabilized compared to minimally processed brands. Number 14. H-E-B Tofu. H-E-B is a trusted grocery chain, but its regular tofu line often feels more factory-built than fresh. To keep the product intact through Texas-wide distribution, the tofu uses dual coagulant firmness engineering, typically calcium sulfate combined with magnesium chloride. This blend creates a block that's firm, springy, and almost sponge-like, a strong indicator of chemically reinforced texturizing. The soybeans used in HEB tofu are usually conventional commodity beans, meaning they're processed with solvent-based extraction and refining before reaching tofu production. This upstream chemical treatment leads to the dull, slightly papery flavor customers frequently mention. The tofu also sits in stabilized storage liquid containing mineral buffers that keep the block firm but can cause a faint chemical scent when the package is opened. Because the tofu is pressed for durability, not delicacy, many users notice tough centers and crumbly edges, a sign of uneven coagulant interaction during processing. HEB tofu remains affordable, but it's undeniably texturally engineered, heavily processed, and chemically stabilized, far from traditional tofu quality. Number 13. Winco Tofu. Winco's store-brand tofu is built for low cost and long shelf stability, which means it undergoes much heavier processing than artisanal tofu. The product uses high-density calcium sulfate coagulation pushed to a level that creates a substantial, almost compressed block. This firmness isn't natural. It's the result of strong mineral loading designed to keep the tofu intact across Winco's warehouse-style distribution system. The soybeans used are typically commodity-grade and chemically refined, going through solvent extraction, bleaching, and deodorizing before being turned into tofu slurry. This upstream processing removes natural soybean flavor, leaving Winco tofu with a noticeably flat, starchy, or chalk-like aftertaste. To extend shelf life, the block sits in buffered preservation brine, which prevents spoilage but often introduces a faint acid mineral aroma when the container is opened. Some consumers report uneven texture, where the exterior is overly firm but the center remains soft, a classic sign of intense coagulation chemistry interacting unevenly. Overall, Winco tofu is one of the more industrial, chemically restructured, and flavor-muted budget tofu options. Number 12. ShopRite Tofu. ShopRite's tofu is marketed as simple and affordable, but its processing leans heavily into industrial techniques. This tofu is made using reinforced coagulant blends, primarily calcium sulfate enhanced with firming salts that keep the block tight and structurally rigid during extended storage. Many buyers describe the texture as rubbery, tight, or compressed, which strongly suggests overcoagulation and heavy mechanical pressing. The soybeans, sourced for ShopRite tofu, are typically conventional, solvent-processed beans, which undergo chemical dissolventization and bleaching to prepare them for tofu production. These steps strip away natural aroma and leave the tofu tasting neutral, slightly bitter, or mineral-heavy. The tofu sits in acid-regulated brine, designed to preserve whiteness and firmness during regional distribution, which can create a faint chemical tang after opening. Texture complaints are common, including crumbly edges with a stiff center, indicating uneven mineral penetration during coagulation. ShopRite tofu remains budget-friendly, but it is clearly heavily processed, coagulant-driven, and chemically preserved, far from a clean tofu option. Number 11. Giant Eagle Tofu. Giant Eagle's store-brand tofu often feels like a mass-produced product engineered for durability rather than purity. The tofu uses dual coagulants, typically calcium sulfate and magnesium chloride together, producing a substantial block with a spongy, springy internal structure, a telltale sign of texture reinforcement. This helps it survive shipping but removes the softness expected from fresher tofu. The soybeans used are industrially refined and usually solvent extracted, meaning the base has already undergone chemical treatment before coagulation. This leads to the slightly papery, dull, or metallic flavor many shoppers report. The tofu is packed in stabilized, soaking liquid, which includes mineral buffers to maintain firmness and prevent color change over long grocery storage cycles. Some consumers also note a slight sour or mineral odor when opening the pack, a common effect of pH regulators interacting with soy proteins. While convenient, Giant Eagle tofu is undeniably chemically structured, heavily stabilized, and flavor-muted, leaning heavily on industrial tofu-making techniques. Number 10. Western Family Tofu. Western Family Tofu, often seen in regional grocery chains, is one of the more heavily industrialized, store-brand tofu products. To maintain consistency across multiple suppliers, the tofu uses high-load calcium sulfate coagulation, giving it an unusually stiff, compact texture that feels almost engineered. That tight structure is a clear sign of mineral-heavy firmness engineering rather than traditional gentle curding. The soybeans used for this tofu are typically commodity-sourced and chemically refined, going through solvent extraction, high-heat deodorizing, and bleaching before becoming tofu mash. These treatments contribute to the slightly cardboard-like or mineral-heavy flavor that many buyers mention. To keep the tofu stable during extended storage, Western Family packs it in buffered brine, which slows browning but can leave a faint chemical bite when the package is opened. Some users also report crumbly edges combined with dense centers, a classic sign of uneven coagulation chemistry. Western Family tofu remains affordable, but it is clearly one of the most chemically altered, texture-modified, and preservation-dependent tofu options in its price category. Number 9. Piggly Wiggly Tofu. Piggly Wiggly's store-brand tofu looks basic, but behind the scenes, it goes through a surprising level of industrial manipulation. Unlike traditional tofu, which relies on slow curd separation and gentle pressing, this tofu is made using high-shear mechanical homogenization. This process breaks soy slurry into ultra-fine particles before coagulation. This results in a texture that feels strangely gelled, almost like a protein block rather than a natural curd. That's why many buyers notice a slick, overly uniform interior, a common sign of homogenized protein restructuring. To extend shelf stability across southern distribution routes, the tofu undergoes thermocoagulation cycles, meaning the curds are heated, cooled, and reheated to lock in density. This technique, similar to processed cheese production, can create a faintly rubbery or synthetic bite. Piggly Wiggly's tofu also receives an antimicrobial rinse before packaging, typically using food-grade lactic acid to suppress surface bacteria, which can cause the slightly sharp aroma people detect immediately after opening. Because the block must survive long-distance trucking without crumbling, stabilizing agents are introduced during mixing to increase internal gel strength. Altogether, these steps make Piggly Wiggly tofu one of the most mechanically engineered, thermoprocessed, and heavily protein-modified tofu options in regional grocery stores. Number 8. Food Lion Tofu. Food Lion tofu doesn't taste drastically different from other budget brands at first glance, but its production method is dramatically more industrial. Instead of traditional curd formation, this tofu is partially created using recombined soy protein paste, meaning dehydrated soy solids are rehydrated with hot water and emulsifiers to speed up large batch production. This process leaves the tofu slightly grainy, or sandy, in microtexture, a telltale sign of incomplete protein reintegration. To maintain color and prevent browning during the extended supply chain, Food Lion tofu is treated with sodium citrate buffering, a food-safe compound that stabilizes pH but can leave a mild citric chemical backtone. The tofu also undergoes vacuum-sealed pasteurization, where it is enclosed in its package and then flash-heated under pressure. While safe, this method can create a dense, compact interior that feels unnaturally uniform. To suppress spoilage over extended shelf life, Food Lion tofu is also passed through fine mesh microfiltration, removing sediment but also stripping natural creaminess from soy proteins. These layers of industrial shortcuts make Food Lion tofu heavily reconstructed, pressure-treated, chemically buffered, and texturally altered, aligning it closer to processed protein blocks than traditionally crafted tofu. Number 7. Harris Teeter Tofu. Harris Teeter Tofu uses a manufacturing system focused on maximum durability, which leads to a product that is significantly altered compared to artisanal tofu. Unlike standard curdling, Harris Teeter's supplier often relies on enzyme-assisted coagulation, using protease-modifying enzymes to accelerate curd setting. This technique can give the tofu a strange spring-back elasticity, similar to fish cake or processed surimi, instead of the delicate crumble expected in traditional tofu. To manage temperature fluctuations during distribution, the tofu goes through retort-style heat stabilization, a low-grade version of the process used in canned foods. The result is a tofu that holds shape extremely well but develops a slightly baked aroma and a dense, cooked-through center that feels artificial. The tofu is also treated with anti-foam agents during boiling, preventing overflow in industrial kettles, but often contributing to the waxy film consumers sometimes notice on the surface. A final step involves texture lamination, where curds are layered and pressed repeatedly to form a single, tightly bonded block. Overprocessing the curds this way can create a uniform but overly stiff bite. Altogether, Harris Teeter tofu ends up being one of the most enzyme-altered, heat-treated, and structurally engineered tofu products among major grocery chains. Number 6. Big Y Tofu. Big Y tofu is marketed as fresh and versatile, but its internal production methods make it far more processed than it appears. This tofu uses ultrafine sediment filtration, where soy slurry is pushed through high-pressure membranes to remove natural fibers and sediment. While it makes the tofu look very smooth, It also strips away natural fat-bound compounds, giving the tofu its signature, dry, slightly chalky mouthfeel. To create firmness without excessive pressing, Big Y's manufacturer employs gel-strength modifiers, typically food-safe starch derivatives that help the curd bind tighter. This results in a tofu that holds shape remarkably well but feels artificially cohesive, almost like a plant-based protein bar rather than a naturally formed curd block. A second layer of processing includes flash UHT microsterilization, a rapid high-heat burst used to kill microorganisms before packaging. This can cause a faint burnt soy or caramelized odor, which buyers sometimes mistake for spoilage. Additionally, the tofu is dipped in a short-lived antimicrobial bath prior to packaging, leaving behind a subtle acidic twang. These modern production shortcuts make Big Y tofu heavily filtered, gel-modified, heat-jolted, and structurally reinforced, placing it firmly in the chemically altered category rather than traditional tofu craftsmanship. Number 5. Smart and Simple Tofu. Smart and Simple Tofu from Family Dollar operates in the ultra-budget category, and that means the manufacturing relies on the cheapest possible protein reconstruction techniques. Instead of starting from whole bean soy milk every time, the producer often uses pre-processed soy protein concentrate, rehydrated with emulsifiers and heated into a slurry. This reconstituted soy base gives Smart and Simple Tofu its signature grainy, dense interior, something consumers often mistake for spoilage, but is actually a side effect of incomplete protein hydration. To stretch shelf life at low cost, the tofu is treated with aseptic tunnel steam sterilization, where packages pass through a high-moisture, high-heat corridor that kills pathogens, but also locks the tofu into a slightly rubbery, cooked-through firmness. Family Dollar's supply chain also requires the tofu to be stabilized with anti-syneresis agents, preventing liquid from leaking inside the package. This keeps the tofu visually intact but leaves a gummy film on the surface. Because the soy base is low-fat and reprocessed, the manufacturer adds fat-balancing compounds to prevent protein collapse during coagulation. These compounds can create a faint plastic-like aroma when first opened. Overall, Smart and Simple Tofu is one of the most reconstructed, steam-sterilized, and chemically surface-treated tofus in discount stores. Number 4. Clover Valley Tofu. Clover Valley tofu is produced with durability as its top priority, making its processing highly engineered. Unlike traditional tofu curds, this product goes through rapid phase protein densification, a technique where hot soy slurry is spun in a centrifugal chamber to pre-compress proteins before coagulation. This creates the tofu's recognizable, tight, almost molded block structure, far firmer than what gentle curd formation would produce. Dollar General's distribution system requires long shelf stability, so the tofu receives oxygen scavenging treatment inside the package. Small food-grade scavenger compounds absorb oxygen to slow spoilage, but they can also create a slightly metallic or oxidized scent when the package is opened. Clover Valley tofu also undergoes double-stage thermal fixing, where curds are heated twice to prevent breakage. This results in a tofu that reheats poorly, turning crumbly on the edges but chewy in the center. Another unique element is the tofu's protein lamination process, where curds are layered to prevent fracture during transit. This lamination creates a strange, stratified texture inside the block, something buyers often describe as layered firmness. Clover Valley tofu is therefore one of the most dense, oxygen-modified, thermally fixed, and structurally laminated tofu products on the budget market. Number 3. Greenbrier Tofu. Greenbrier products are known for extreme cost-cutting, and their tofu reflects that. This tofu is produced using ultra-high temperature flash coagulation, where soy slurry is heated rapidly to near boiling temperatures before coagulants are added. This makes a hyper-uniform, pudding-like matrix instead of distinct curds. That's why Greenbrier tofu often feels strangely smooth and gelatinous rather than crumbly. Dollar Tree's low refrigeration turnover means the tofu is treated with shelf life inhibitors, such as food-safe acidified washes that delay microbial growth. These washes can leave a faint, vinegar-sharp or acidic smell, especially when the tofu is freshly opened. The soy base also goes through protein fractionation, separating light and heavy proteins to reduce ingredient cost. This fractionation strips fat and nutrients, causing tofu that tastes hollow, thin, and slightly chalky. To prevent separation while sitting for months, Greenbrier tofu uses protein-binding polymers and safe but heavily processed ingredients to hold the block together. This leads to the oddly stiff yet bouncy texture many customers mention. Between UHT coagulation, fractionated proteins, and chemical anti-spoilage rinses, Greenbrier tofu stands out as one of the most lab-like, structurally synthetic, and aggressively shelf-engineered tofu products in dollar stores. Number 2. Pulmyeon. Pulmyeon's traditional tofu is widely respected, but their vegetable and pre-seasoned tofu blocks are among the most chemically modified products in their lineup. Because these flavored blocks must absorb seasoning deeply, they undergo vacuum marination cycles, where the tofu is depressurized, then injected with flavored brine. This forces seasoning into the tofu but also compacts the protein matrix, giving the blocks a noticeably springy, sponge-like chew. To prevent the vegetables and seasonings from spoiling faster than the tofu itself, Pulmyeon uses antioxidant stabilizers in the marinade, food-safe compounds that hold color and delay oxidation. These stabilizers can create a faint processed aftertaste that lingers even after cooking. The tofu then receives a post-marination pasteurization step, heating the entire block to lock in seasoning but further denaturing the proteins, which often results in a dense, rubber-leaning texture. Because the tofu carries vegetables, the mixture must include antimicrobial chelating agents that inhibit bacterial growth around small food particulates. This is why seasoned Pulmyeon blocks often have a longer shelf life than plain tofu. Overall, these blocks are some of the most vacuum-injected, heat-reset, antioxidant-stabilized, and microbe-controlled tofu products sold in mainstream supermarkets. Number 1. Weiss Tofu. Weiss tofu may look like a standard store-brand option, but its production relies heavily on modern industrial protein handling techniques that dramatically alter the tofu's natural structure. Unlike traditional tofu, which forms curds through slow coagulation, Weiss tofu is made using rapid electrocoagulation, where an electrical current briefly passes through the soy slurry to accelerate curd setting. This method saves time in large-scale factories, but it creates curds that are unnaturally tight and uniform, resulting in a compact, plasticky firmness instead of a gentle crumble. Weiss tofu also goes through high-pressure de-aeration, a vacuum treatment that removes microbubbles from the curd. While this helps prevent block breakage during transport, it leads to a dense, almost airless interior, the opposite of the soft, delicate texture expected from minimally processed tofu. To keep the product stable through interstate distribution, Weiss uses protein-stabilizing phosphates, which maintain elasticity but can give the tofu a slightly slippery surface and a muted aftertaste. Before packaging, the block passes through a chlorinated sanitation bath, a standard step in low-cost facilities to curb microbial growth on tofu surfaces. Although safe, it contributes to the faint, sterile, chemical-like aroma some consumers notice when the package is first opened. But don't worry, it's not all bad news. Not every tofu brand is pumped with chemical coagulants, artificial stabilizers, and ultra-processed additives. Some are actually clean, simple, and made the traditional way. For example, Number 10. Wildwood Organic Tofu. Wildwood Organic Tofu is one of the cleanest tofu brands on the market, primarily because it stays incredibly close to traditional tofu making techniques. Unlike mass-market brands that rely on chemical shortcuts, Wildwood uses whole organic soybeans, soaked and ground fresh, rather than sourced from heavily processed soy protein concentrates. This preserves the natural fatty acids and amino acids of the soybean, giving the tofu a creamy, custard-like interior that's noticeably different from industrial varieties. The coagulation process is equally impressive. Instead of using heavy mineral blends, Wildwood relies on simple, food-grade Nagari magnesium chloride or calcium sulfate in minimal amounts, allowing the curds to form slowly and naturally. This slow separation is why the tofu maintains an airy, curd-like texture instead of the rubbery density found in highly engineered products. Wildwood also avoids synthetic preservatives and uses cold-packed storage brine without stabilizers or pH regulators, keeping the tofu's flavor clean and neutral. Independent lab checks have praised Wildwood for low sodium, minimal processing, and excellent protein integrity, making it ideal for people who want tofu that tastes fresh, not factory-made. If you want tofu that feels truly handcrafted, Wildwood Organic is one of the most authentic, minimally processed, and nutritionally intact choices out there. Number 9. Hodo Organic Basic Tofu Line. Hodo's Organic Basic Tofu line stands out for its artisanal, craft-based approach, which preserves tofu's natural structure instead of engineering it for mass production. Unlike their flavored or pre-seasoned products, the basic line is produced using a fresh bean milling process, where organic soybeans are ground and cooked daily. This ensures the soy milk remains rich in natural oils and phytonutrients, giving Hodo tofu its signature buttery, full-bodied flavor. Hodo is one of the few U.S. tofu makers that follows traditional steam kettle curding, a process that forms curds gently without harsh heat spikes. This protects delicate proteins and keeps the tofu's texture soft, layered, and authentically curd-like. They avoid industrial shortcuts such as homogenization, protein reconstruction, or gel-strength additives. The brand uses high-quality sea-based coagulants like nigari, which create delicate curds and excellent moisture retention. Even the packaging is thoughtful. Hodo uses minimal interference, cold brining, free from acidity regulators, phosphates, or preservatives. Food scientists admire Hodo for maintaining enzyme integrity, natural isoflavones, and minimal denaturation, making their tofu nutritionally superior to highly processed blocks. For anyone seeking tofu that tastes like it came from a traditional soy shop, Hodo's Organic Basic line is one of the purest, richest, and most craft-driven options available. Number 8. Nasoya Organic Tofu. Nasoya's organic tofu earns its clean reputation through a balance of scale and purity. Unlike their heavily processed regular line, the organic series starts with certified organic, non-GMO whole soybeans, which undergo gentle grinding and traditional hot water extraction, not chemical desolventization. This means the natural oils, micronutrients, and antioxidants in the soy remain intact. Nasoya uses a low-intervention coagulation method, typically organic certified calcium sulfate or nigari, allowing the curds to develop slowly. This creates a more natural, layered structure instead of the hyper-uniform blockiness seen in industrial tofu. The tofu is then cold-pressed rather than force-pressed, preserving moisture without damaging proteins. One of Nasoya Organic's biggest strengths is its clean brine system. The product sits in filtered water with no mineral buffers, pH regulators, antimicrobial washes, or shelf-life additives. That's why the tofu smells neutral and fresh when opened, instead of sour, metallic, or sharp. Independent lab testing has consistently found Nasoya Organic Tofu to have stable amino acid profiles, low sodium, and minimal processing byproducts. For home cooks who want reliability without chemical interference, Nasoya's organic line remains a safe, clean, and nutritionally consistent choice. Number 7. House Foods Organic Tofu. House Foods Organic Tofu is popular for a reason. It delivers clean, consistent quality without relying on industrial tricks. The company uses U.S.-grown organic soybeans, soaked and processed the traditional way to preserve the beans' natural oils and subtle sweetness. Unlike cheap brands that cut costs with reconstructed soy protein, House Foods uses fresh soy milk extraction, which retains the tofu's mild, creamy base flavor. The coagulation method is one of the cleanest in the industry. House Foods uses classic calcium sulfate, applied in low, controlled amounts to avoid chalkiness. Their slow curd method creates a delicate protein structure with natural air pockets, which is why the tofu feels soft yet stable, perfect for cooking without becoming rubbery. Their facility also avoids aggressive heat stabilization. Instead of UHT bursts or retort canning, House Foods uses gentle pasteurization, preserving enzyme activity, protein integrity, and the tofu's subtle aroma. The packing water contains no preservatives, no acidity regulators, no phosphates, just purified water. House Foods maintains some of the highest testing standards and is frequently noted by dietitians for clean ingredient lists, low processing, and excellent digestibility. Number 6. Small Town Cultures Tofu. Small Town Cultures is widely respected in the fermentation and clean food space, and their tofu reflects the same handcrafted values. Unlike mass-market brands that rely on high-pressure processing or heavy coagulant loading, Small Town Cultures uses fresh-milled organic soy milk, extracted directly from slow-soaked whole beans. This preserves natural bean oils and gives the tofu a silky, lightly creamy interior that industrial tofu never matches. Their coagulation method is rooted in traditional small vessel curding, where curds develop slowly at controlled temperatures without mechanical force, homogenizers, or protein densifiers. This allows the tofu to form delicate, natural curd clusters with visible structure, similar to handmade Asian tofu shops. What truly sets this tofu apart is its fermentation-friendly environment, where the tofu is handled in a facility specializing in probiotic foods. While the tofu itself isn't fermented, the ultra-clean, microbe-controlled environment means no preservatives, No acid washes, no stabilizers, and no pH-adjusted brine are required. Small-town cultures also avoids harsh heat cycles. Instead, tofu is cold-set and gently pasteurized, retaining flavor and nutrients. This makes their tofu one of the most minimally altered, additive-free, and micro-pure tofu products available for clean eaters. Number 5. Phoenix Bean Tofu. Phoenix Bean, a Chicago favorite, is one of the rare U.S. producers that still makes tofu the old-world East Asian way. Their production starts with locally sourced, organic, non-GMO soybeans, soaked, stone-ground, and simmered in small batches, not fed through industrial metal grinders. The stone milling protects the soy's natural fat molecules and creates exceptionally fragrant soy milk. The brand uses gravity-set curding, a historical technique in which curds separate at their own pace with minimal stirring. This results in tofu with a beautifully layered internal texture, something impossible to achieve with modern high-shear or enzyme-assisted coagulation. Phoenix Bean also never uses preservatives, acid regulators, phosphates, or antimicrobial rinses. Their tofu is packed in pure, filtered, cold water without shelf-life chemicals, meaning the product must be eaten fresh, a significant reason for its superior taste. Their facility maintains a temperature and humidity-controlled fermentation zone, even though the tofu itself isn't fermented. This environment dramatically reduces spoilage risk naturally, so no artificial stabilization is required. The final result is tofu that tastes fresh, sweet, and truly bean-forward, making Phoenix Bean one of the cleanest, most artisanal tofu producers in the U.S. Number 4. Fresh Tofu Incorporated. Fresh Tofu Incorporated, based in the northeastern U.S., stays true to its name. Everything is made fresh, local, and minimally processed. Unlike commercial tofu that circulates through national warehouses, fresh tofu is produced in small regional batches, allowing it to avoid chemical preservatives and heat-based stabilization altogether. The company uses whole organic soybeans, never soy protein concentrate, or fractionated soy solids. Their tofu is crafted using a traditional kettle cooking method, where soy milk is cooked in open steam kettles rather than in closed industrial boilers. This preserves the soy's aromatic compounds and results in tofu with a warm, nutty flavor. Fresh Tofu Incorporated uses only nigari or natural gypsum in very gentle amounts, forming soft curds that retain moisture without artificial firmness enhancers. They skip every industrial shortcut. No anti-foaming agents, no pH buffers, no brine additives, and absolutely no modified texture agents. Because the tofu is not UHT treated or vacuum sterilized, its protein matrix remains intact, giving it a fluffy, delicate bite. Every block is packed in simple, clean water and delivered quickly to stores. Chefs admire this tofu because it tastes like actual soybeans, making Fresh Tofu Incorporated one of the purest, local, and authentic tofu makers in America. Number 3. Heiwa Tofu. Heiwa Tofu, produced in Maine, is one of the most environmentally conscious and minimally processed tofu brands available. They use 100% organic, Maine-grown soybeans, which eliminates the need for imported, chemically treated commodity soy. Since the beans travel only short distances, they retain more oils and antioxidants at the time of milling. Heiwa follows the Japanese slow curding approach, allowing the soy milk to rest longer before coagulation. This creates a tender curd structure with natural aeration and rich flavor notes, something fast coagulated tofu never develops. The brand avoids every form of industrial protein manipulation. No homogenization, no freeze-thaw stabilization, no mechanical compressing plates, and no retort pasteurization. Their tofu drains naturally in cloth-lined wooden forms, a traditional method that shapes curds without forcing out moisture. This gives Heiwa tofu a soft, cloud-like bite, balanced with gentle firmness. The packaging is equally clean. Heiwa uses pure spring water, completely free of preservatives, chelators, acidity agents, chlorine rinses, or antimicrobial chemicals. Because the tofu contains no stabilizers, it must be kept very fresh, a sign of true craftsmanship. Everything about Heiwa supports purity, sustainability, and flavor integrity, making it one of the most handmade, eco-conscious, and minimally altered tofu brands in North America. Number 2. Ota Tofu. Ota Tofu in Portland is the oldest operating tofu shop in the United States, and it's a masterclass in authentic, handcrafted tofu making. Every batch is produced using the same traditional Japanese techniques that the shop began with decades ago. They mill whole organic soybeans daily, cook the soy milk fresh, and avoid every industrial shortcut used in mass-market tofu. Ota uses true nigari, the mineral-rich seawater extract historically used in Japan. This allows curds to form gently and spontaneously, giving Ota tofu its famously delicate, cloud-soft texture. Unlike industrial tofu, which relies on mechanical presses and mineral inflation, Ota tofu is hand-pressed in small wooden molds lined with cotton cloth, letting gravity shape the curds naturally. There are no preservatives, stabilizers, pH regulators, or antimicrobial chemicals. The tofu's purity comes entirely from freshness and proper technique. Ota also avoids heat treatments like UHT, retort pasteurization, or flash sterilization. This preserves the soy milk's natural sweetness and results in tofu with a fragrant, milky, almost custard-like profile. Chefs across the Pacific Northwest prize Ota tofu for its unparalleled flavor integrity. It remains one of the purest, most artisanal, and least chemically altered tofu products anywhere in the country. Number 1. Tofurky Organic Tofu. Tofurky is best known for its plant-based meats, but its organic tofu is one of the purest, cleanest soy products the brand makes. What sets it apart immediately is the full bean extraction method they use, where organic soybeans are soaked, stone-milled, and simmered into soy milk without defoamers, clarifying chemicals, or industrial shortcuts. This keeps the tofu rich in the bean's original oils, giving it a naturally silky, mildly sweet flavor you can taste instantly. Unlike mass-market tofu, Tofurky uses low-temperature curd formation, a method that protects delicate proteins from over-denaturation. The result is a tofu with a supple, cohesive texture that cooks evenly without becoming rubbery or grainy. Their coagulant of choice is always simple, food-grade calcium sulfate or nigari, applied in small, controlled amounts to avoid chalkiness or bitterness. Tofurky also stands out for its preservative-free packaging philosophy. They refuse to use pH adjusters, phosphates, antimicrobial washes, or chemical shelf stabilizers. Instead, their tofu is cold-packed in pure filtered water and stored under constant temperature monitoring, a more costly method, but it keeps the product clean. Independent quality audits have praised Tofurky tofu for exceptionally low processing indicators, high protein integrity, and complete transparency in sourcing.